Very hot welcome to you guys joining us online today. And I guess you've joined me today because you have an interest in Sphero Bolt. You might have heard of the brand Sphero sort of bounce around fellow teachers in other schools, and you've got an interest in maybe seeing what it's capable of and if it fits your curriculum. Or you might be an avid Sphero lover at the moment and have the original Bolt and seeing if the upgrade is essentially worth your time. Okay. So first things first, we're going to start with a really, really quick poll. I would love to know what year groups you guys teach in. And I know Monica's in the States, so she's grades. So let's have a look. So we've got on the years 1 to 9. If you're reception or even above, if you click NA and then just tell us a little bit more about yourself, that'd be brilliant. Just give you a couple of seconds to enter that. Okay, Kim, we're all good. Okay. Oh my goodness, this is like I've never seen a split like that before. That's brilliant. So it's pretty much equal weighting across key stage 1, 2, and 3. Or if you're in the States, I'd say that's K to grade 8. So brilliant. We've got a right old spread there, which is very, very cool. Okay, so this is what today's agenda looks like. I've tried to put together an agenda, like I said, that will give you a bit of an insight as to what Bolt is and what Bolt Plus is, but also for the ones that have Bolt already, what are the actual differences between the old to the new. Okay, I'll go through the hardware and the software features, and then I'll show you probably the most important section, which is the Sphero Central, which is where all of the lessons are housed for us teachers to dip into it and deliver to our actual students. Then we'll have a look at some of the actual lesson resources and see what Sphero actually give us to deliver those sessions. And then we can have a bit of a discussion on how we can take it a little bit further, whether it be co-curricular or even summer camp use. So first things first, we're going to look at, just give you an overview of what Sphero Bolt Plus is. Okay, so this is a spherical shaped robot that is designed for learners ages 8 to 16. And if you're slightly younger than that bracket or slightly older than that bracket, we do have the ability to differentiate this up and down to suit those extra ages, as it were. But it's a brilliant product. You can see it's a spherical shaped ball, and it's incredibly durable and waterproof. You probably look at it and think it looks quite fragile. It looks like a glass ball. It is incredibly strong. I've dropped many of these in my time, and so have students, and they will drop them. But fortunately, they do take a lot of hits, and they're really, really strong. Also, inside these, the Sphero Bolt is a lot of technology. Okay, so there's lots of motors and sensors. We've got an actual LCD screen built into the top of this one. We've got infrared sensors, so we can send messages to other bolts in the class. And then we've got sensors like light sensors, so we can actually program this little bolt to respond to different lights in different places. In terms of coding it, we do have the ability to use 3 different coding languages. And I'll show you those afterwards, but we have draw, which is essentially the children will draw shapes, and then the bolt will replicate those shapes with its movement. We have word blocks, which is very, very similar to Scratch, but obviously you're moving something physical now. And then finally, to stretch the top end of primary, going into key stage 3 and 4, we do have the Python text-based option as well. So there's plenty of ways for us to differentiate it in our lessons. And then even though this product is aimed at developing programming skills, there are a lot of many cross-curricular uses that we can actually enter, and I'll show you some of those lessons afterwards. So this is a bit of a product overview from Sphero, just so you can see where Bolt actually sits within its sort of collection, as it were. So you can see in the younger ages, so we're targeting, key stage 1, we have something called Sphero Indie, and that is a tiny little vehicle that responds to different colored cards, and it's aimed at developing the early computational thinking skills. So no block-based coding there. It's all about learning sequencing, debugging, and abstraction. Then we move on to the Sphero Mini, which is essentially a smaller, less capable version of what I've got in my hand right now. And again, that's primarily aimed at teaching programming, and we use word blocks for that. Then we got the Little Bits kits, and that's when we start to look at things like circuits, and it teaches kids about inputs and outputs in circuits. And then you can see the Bolt Plus sits right in the middle there, from ages 8 all the way up to 15. And then above that, if we need to take it a step further, we've got something called a Sphero Rover Plus, which is a programmable robot, but also something that you can build on top of and actually use microbits to take it one step further. And then finally, at the very, very top as well, we have something called Sphero Blueprint and a Blueprint Engineering Kit. And that is to develop pupils' design thinking and engineering skills at a higher level. So that is the product lineup. What I would like to know is, you've told me what year groups you currently teach. Do you currently have any Sphero products in your school, like Sphero Indie or even the old bolts? I'd like to have a enter on that poll now. I'll just be interested to see if we have people who are from the ecosystem of Sphero or are brand new to it. Okay, so quite a lot of you, four of you guys out of the 6 have actually got the Indie, which is really, really popular. I love Indie. My son is 6 years old, and he is a massive fan of this. It's very, very intuitive, very tangible, a great collaborative product that teaches those early computational thinking skills. I can see half of you guys on this group as well have the original Bolt, and therefore probably interested in seeing the differences. And then a couple of you guys also have some of the others like Rover Plus, etc. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Kim. Right. So with that in mind then, for the people who have the original Bolt, what is the difference? Why would I consider Bolt Plus? Why would I consider the upgrade to Bolt Plus over the original Bolt? There's a couple of big differences. There's a few more than what's on the screen, but I'll cover the big ones. Probably the biggest one for me when I've been going out to schools and workshops is the improvement in the power management. So you might be familiar with the power packs. Kim, I don't know if you can switch and make my screen bigger right now so people can see the Bolt and the actual station itself. But if you had the original Bolt, you'd probably have a Bolt, and then you have this wireless cradle, okay? And they would sit in the suitcase if you had that power pack, and they would charge. But as soon as you took them off charge, they were basically on constantly. So if you left them off charge and you left them for a week, the chances are they would be completely flat. With these ones now, they've got a special shake to wake feature. So this one has been sitting on my desk for quite some time now, maybe a couple of weeks. I haven't used it for maybe a week or so. And if I give it a shake to wake, you can see actually when it powers on, I still have battery, and better still, it's still showing full bars. So the power management is much superior on this one in comparison to the previous one. Also now it benefits from something called QI wireless charging, which is what's basically in your MagSafe in like your iPhones these days. And it essentially means it just charges a lot quicker on these cradles that they have. Okay, so much, much better battery. And then in terms of classroom management, when you're actually connecting to the Bolt and things, it has now these little printed IDs below the screen. But also when you shake it to wake it, the Bluetooth name comes up on the screen as well. So there's some welcome improvements there for students to be able to connect really, really quickly and get straight into their lesson. Also, if you've had to stop the class and explain something and the bolts have gone to sleep to preserve that power, when the kids turn back on their iPad, it will automatically reconnect. So that's a really, really useful feature for them to get back into their work as soon as you've done your input. Okay. Probably the obvious one for Bolt, from Bolt to Bolt Plus, is the new LCD screen. So instead of having little LED dots on the top, now we have a fully working LCD screen, which means we can create some really cool animations and show various images on the screen depending on what activity we are doing. So we do a lot with football clubs. So a lot of the kids program different football animations on top for when they're passing to different players, and then maybe create a crowd cheering on there when they actually score a goal. So that's really, really useful. And then inside, it's actually really quite hard to tell when you compare it to the original Bolt. But there's also some new hardware inside the ball as well, which gives it not only the new hardware, but new software and new coding blocks for us to use when it comes to the coding. So quite a few welcome additions there. And you'll see a couple of those extra coding blocks when we get into some of my later slides. Okay. Do we have any questions at this point, Kim? Are we all good?
Nope, no new questions in there at the moment. A couple of comments. Michael was saying that he is new, but he's had a recent arrival of the Indy and the Bolt Plus.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to you. Okay, then, so let's progress on. We're going to do another poll now. And what I would like you guys to do is just tell me, maybe in the comments section or on the poll itself, how you see yourself utilizing the Bolt Plus. Is it primarily for teaching coding and physical computing? Or are you looking to use it further afield, maybe in science and engineering, or even to help bring mathematics into a practical activity? Can you let me know how you're going to use this? We might also have STEM facilitators on this call that might go out to schools. So I'd love to know how you guys are planning to utilize it as well. Okay, yeah. So as predicted, the majority of you are using it to develop those coding and computer science concepts. And then there's a bit of a crossover to science and engineering there as well. Okay, and I think we had a comment in there about outreach project, 1 hour sessions. Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Now, regardless of what subject you guys are planning on utilizing this kit for, we're quite fortunate in having a big library of lessons that are being curated by Sphero, but also there's some community lessons that have been created as well. And they're all housed on something called the Sphero Central. So Meg, I hope you don't mind, could you drop in the link to the Sphero Central website, please? And then whilst you do that, I've also got the QR code on the screen. But you can see the Sphero Central is essentially a one-stop shop for us teachers. So we can get, first of all, up and running with brand new kits. So I think it was Michael that just said he bought new Bolt Pluses and Indies. Michael, this is a perfect place for you to get sort of your head around how to set it up and what to be mindful of before we go out and deliver our first workshops. In there as well, it's got some classroom management ideas you may want to take in, some tutorials. And then the main thing for us then is the collection of lessons that we can utilize. Okay, so I'm going to just flick over to that now so I can go through this with you guys. So hopefully you can see the Sphero Central website on my screen now. And as educators, what we can do is create a free sign-in. We can register up here. And what that allows us to do is sort of save our favorite lessons that we plan on using with our year 3s, year 4s, year 5s, etc. We can sort of bookmark them to make sure we've got them ready and good to go for our curriculum lessons. And then on this page, you'll see all of the product lineup for Sphero, including the new exciting one that's coming out this year, which is the Blueprint Robotics. And then we've got all of the different products below. So if I click on Sphero BOLT Plus, this will take me to this page here. Now, on the first tab is all about getting started. So there's a really nice introductory video here. And then you've got sections about how to deploy it effectively in your school. There's lots and lots of links here that you can refer to make sure you're up and running and feeling confident that it's going to go well on your very first session. And then the middle tab here, we've got the lessons, which I will come back to in a moment. And then the final one is resources. And in here, you just find some extra bits of information that you can download or refer to for your lessons. So for example, in here, we've got a quick start guide. There's a nice PDF on things to know about charging and connecting, etc. And then we've also got those introductory challenge cards that come in your Power Pack if you buy the actual Power Pack, and it gives them mini progressive challenges in there. So that's a lovely resource, but this is the main section, the lessons. So if I tap on this, so what you will see here are collections, the individual Sphero lessons, and then also these are the approved community lessons that other educators around the world have actually created, okay, which is really, really useful, especially for those sort of themed moments in the year, whether it be sort of like a festive activity for Christmas or Easter. This is where sort of the community area comes into its own. If I go back to collections, I want you to imagine now that I am sort of a year 3 and year 4 teacher, and I want to utilize Bolt to teach things like sequencing and debugging. You've got these programming units here. So you can see there's 5 lessons in this one. In this one, there's 6, and that's all about loops and conditionals. And then here we've got 6 as well, and that's about events, variables, and functions. So really well labeled. So if I click on this and click take your pick, what you will see here are a couple of things. You'll see, first of all, the duration, which is really important. I think the majority of the Sphero lessons are designed with an hour in mind. So that's perfect for most schools. Then we've got the lesson code, which I'll talk about afterwards. And then if you're in the States, you've also got your education standards here for what the lesson actually adheres to. Unfortunately for us in the UK, they have not mapped it to the UK curriculum, but it's fairly straightforward. They cover very similar skills, fortunately. Then before we actually dive into the lesson plan, we've got a description of what the lesson is, and then you've got your I can statements here of what you are working towards. And then for this lesson, if I click lesson guide, this is where then we will find the lesson plan. And it gives us, again, the I can statements, and it will break everything down into these steps. So you've got step 1, which is exploration, where the kids sort of dive in and discover the code that they've been given. Step 2 is skills building. So they'll build upon what they've explored. Step 3 is challenge, and then step 4 is share, which is essentially like your plenary at the end of the session. Okay, so they've given us a bit of structure here. We don't have to use it, but it's sort of a nice to have if we are delivering that specific lesson. And then below that are these instructions. Now, this is what the class code that does. When the kids are on their iPads and they enter a code, it brings up some sample code for them to actually play around with, and it gives them this instructional panel. But I will show you that in a little bit more detail in a moment as we dive into the Sphero the student-facing app. Okay. So in terms of collections, then you can see we've obviously got the programming ones. Sphero have now created their own AI modules, which is brilliant, such a hot topic. And if you've got it, you've got a Bolt, then you've got 13 lessons straight away that you can use there as well. And if we scroll down here, this is where we start to then enter the cross-curricular unit. So you can see there's one on engineering and design. You've then got science, and then you even got topics like cybersecurity for your IT curriculum as well. So there's plenty of resources in there which we can utilize. Any questions at this point, Kim? Because I know that's a lot of information to take in.
Nothing in the chat at the minute.
Okay, brilliant. Just stop me, guys, if you are unsure about something there. Okay. Right, I'm just going to flick back to this. Well, I'll tell you what, actually, I'm going to nab one of these codes. So I think it's really good, actually, if I just show you the sort of workflow I would go through as a teacher, okay? So you can sort of familiarize yourself with how I use the Sphero Central, and then the app. So imagine I was teaching this very first sequencing lesson. I've understood the lesson plan. I'm happy with it. And I might have created my own slide deck to show the kids. I'm also going to copy this. Okay, now this is what the kids get to help structure their coding when it comes to it. Okay, so this lesson is all about sequencing. So I can select a program that best solves a problem, and I can create a program to solve a given problem. Okay. So I'm ready as a teacher. I know the lesson I've got in mind. I'm going to do this with my year 3s or year 4s. I've made my slide deck. I've got the code. And then what are the kids going to have? Well, they're going to have this Sphero EDU app. Okay. So this app is a web-based app, or it's a free download on the iOS devices. If you download it on the iPads, it can be an offline device. So you can take it outside or venture somewhere where it doesn't have very strong Wi-Fi, and the app will still work. Which is amazing because, yeah, I used to go out on the AstroTurf in my old school, and we used to do crazy golf, and we used to set up a little golf course, and the kids would program their bolts like being a golf ball and trying to actually get it to the hole in the fewest amount of attempts, and that would be the number of shots that they took. So yeah, that definitely opens up more opportunities there for an offline, the offline version. So what does it look like? I'm just going to switch to my other one. So hopefully you can see my screen now. It looks very, very simple, and it's nice and clean and decluttered for our students. Okay. So we've got two main sections on the left-hand side. We've got programs, which is where they will create their own programs, or they will access existing coding blocks. And then we've also got lessons, okay, where we can actually assign lessons to students. So if I go to Sphero programs, you can see, again, if we had one in mind and we just wanted to say, okay, guys, we're going to do loopy pictures today, they can actually click on that, click view program, and it will bring up their coding canvas like this. And they have the coding blocks very, very similar to Scratch. Okay. However, we may have a lesson code. So you saw that I just chose that sequencing lesson. So what I'm going to do is enter the code. And this is what the students would do. So really short code, and click OK. And they can see that programming 1.0, which is the lesson I chose earlier, and click view steps. And what this will bring up now is that step-by-step instructional panel that you guys saw on the Sphero Central earlier on. Okay. And what we can do is toggle the view. So that's just the instructions, or we can actually go half and half, or we can hide it. So if I click start lesson, if it lets me. There we go. Okay. So what I have now on the left are my instructions, and on the right is the coding section. Okay, I've lost my mouse, so 1 minute. There it is. So the kids will be coding on this side here, whereas they have this as a reference point. Now, you may think, actually, I don't want the kids to have that. I want to give my input. I want them to watch what I'm doing and modeling at the front, and then I want them to code. And that's absolutely fine. You can ask them to actually just toggle off the instructions and they'll just have the coding section. However, you might get to a point in the lesson where they've started, but some children are ready to move on to the next step. And then they can use this instructional panel on the left-hand side to make them independent learners and actually move on to the next step. So there's a lot of flexibility for how you deliver these lessons. And I like the way that Sphero actually give us this tutorial panel for us to use or not use, depending on how we want to teach. Okay. So what I just want to quickly do here is I'm just going to move this. I'll tell you what, I'll go to a blank one so it is completely decluttered. And this is mainly to show you all the coding languages, but also for the people who currently have Bolt, what are the new blocks, okay? So if I click Create Program, this is where now you can see the students can choose their coding language. So we've got Draw, which is they would essentially draw lines on the screen and then click Run, and the actual, the Bolt will mimic that path. Then we've got blocks, which is the word blocks you just saw. And then we've also got Python. Okay. So lots of variation there, lots of differentiation. We can enter a program name at the top. So I'm going to call this Demo 1. And then the children will just select which device they've got. So I'm going to do blocks, Bolt Plus, and then click Create. And this is what the pupils will see. Here are all the blocks. So we've got movement blocks, which essentially moves the Bolt Plus. We have lights, which controls the LEDs around the outside. We have the display blocks, which allows us to customize what is shown on top. Matrix, that's primarily for the old Bolt. We don't use those. Sound blocks. So if we want to make a cheering sound as we score a goal, we can do so. Control blocks, so that's like forever loops and if-then conditionals, and then operators, comparators, etc., that you would normally find on other programs. Now, here are a couple of the new blocks that we now have with the Bolt Plus. So Sphero have now updated some of their blocks. So this one, for example, is now that the Bolt will move in a certain direction for a certain speed, for a certain distance. Now, we never used to have this block. The one we used to have before was we were moving for a certain duration. And this was really hard for the kids to actually work mathematically with their distances on a certain mat or a challenge that they were doing. And it would take them quite a while to work out, say if it was 50 centimeters, it might be like 1.2 seconds moving at a certain speed. So it was a lot of variables that the kids had to work on. Whereas now this one, the kids can work mathematically in certain lengths and it will go that distance, which is really nice. Then we got a new one, which is Drive. Now, if you're familiar with the Bolt Plus, when we are actually connected, and I'll just do that really quickly up here, just Bolt Shake to Wake. And you should see it here. There we go. Now, when we are actually connected, we have two ways of controlling it, either via the code or via a little remote control, which you can imagine kids absolutely love, okay? You can see on mine, you'll have a little arrow on top. Oh, my camera's overheating. But yeah, you can either remote control drive this or you can use code blocks. Now, with this new one, we can drive it and run a code at the same time, which is a bit of a game changer. It's makes a huge difference because we can now do things like games of tag, where we can be driving around the Bolt, but then also use things like the IR sensor to disable other bolts when you get into close proximity. So it opens up so many more opportunities of utilizing the bolt for different activities. Okay, so drive is a new one, the distance one is a new one, and then within the sensors, if I go to the event blocks, actually, we've now got ones like when it detects a certain brightness, or also we've got ones that are on button press. So when the program has been actually activated, then I can actually use buttons to activate different behaviors as well. So lots and lots of variation in the hardware, which opens up new opportunities for us as educators. Okay. Any questions on that, Meg? Again, I know it's a lot to take in.
Nope, nothing at the minute.
Sorry, Kim. I said Meg then, didn't I?
That's all right.
I'm just going to reboot my camera because it's not like in the heat, so it's just overheated. Okay, so that's an example of using the Sphero Central, finding a lesson, giving the code to the pupils to get them started with the instructional panel and then sample code. Okay. Now, as teachers, we obviously want to track and sort of assess how well the pupils are doing in terms of taking in all of this information, because we obviously have a computing curriculum to cover. Okay, so how do we track what they are doing on their iPads? Well, there's quite a few different ways. In my previous school, we had something called Shobi, which is sort of an education platform, a bit like Google Classroom. And the kids used to record their bolts completing the activities and then doing screenshots of their code, which was really effective. I could see as a teacher what they did to achieve their certain outcomes. But actually, Sphero have actually created teacher accounts where we can create our own classes. And then once we've done that, we can actually set lessons and then see the outcomes directly in the Sphero Central app. Okay. So this is sort of the process for that. On that website, you can create a teacher account. Then you can create a class and enter a class name. And you can also then input class lists using an Excel spreadsheet document. And then when the kids join the class and select their name, when they complete their work, the teacher can then see it. So you can see all of your pupils' outcomes for every lesson in one place. And that is really, really useful. Let me see if I can demonstrate that now. So I'll just click sign in onto my Sphero Central and click school and teacher. Sign in with Google. Cover your eyes, guys. Okay, so you can see at the top here, I've got my classes, and you can see I've just created a Creative Hut class, and you can see I've got child A, child B, and child C. You can add them via the CSV files here, or just add them in. And then when you've actually given them something to do, in this case, I did a loops lesson. If I actually click on this, where has it gone? I think I've just assigned that when they haven't actually done any work on it yet. But as soon as they've done work on it, it would appear here. So I could click child A and I would actually see all of their coding that they've done. So it's really, really useful just to assess just how well the students are grasping the computer science knowledge I'm trying to teach them. Okay. So that's sort of the curriculum side of things. So curriculum, the Sphero Central and the Sphero app. But what happens then if you're doing workshops or you're doing holiday clubs, which is very fitting for what we're about to break up from school. what about utilizing Sphero Bolt, but not sort of encroaching on my curriculum lessons? Well, Sphero have actually created a bank of summer camp activities. So if you were to scan this QR code now, or I think Meg might be able to drop in the link as well, that will take you directly to Sphero's summer camp page, where you can get some ideas of things you need to think about for classroom management, but also what activities could be utilized for those sessions. And there you can just see I've just done a couple of simple ones that I've done in the past, whereby the kids have designed their own sort of Sphero golf hole in the morning, and then they all come together in the afternoon and actually have a round of golf. That's really, really fun and crafty. And then you can see in that second picture, what I bought for my previous school and for Creative Hut is these fort den building kits. My son absolutely loves these to build dens, but they actually make a brilliant maze that you can customize with the poles and the actual interlocking balls, which is brilliant. Sorry, I've just noticed you cannot see my slide. I will switch there. Can you see it now, guys?
Yeah, that's there.
Sorry, my bad. So there you go. You can sort of see the golf court, hole that one of the kids made, but also you can see the maze that I've started to create with these den building kits. And you can get them anywhere on Amazon for like 10, 15 pounds. And it really creates a really fun activity for the kids. If you had a sort of a bespoke project in mind linked to your school, or you were looking for something a little bit more bespoke for what you were doing in workshops, one of my favorite things to do at Creative Hut is to actually create bespoke activities. Okay. So if you were looking for a bespoke challenge, slide deck, activity mat, we at Creative Hut can actually create those for you, and sort of consulting with you to make sure it meets your particular criteria. So you can see there's one that we've done on the left-hand side for some EFL football clubs, and that was all to do with getting match ready, and they had to go and visit different places of interest before a football game to score as many points as they can. That was a bit of a competition. And then you can see the second one there we did all to do with returning to the moon. And that's an Artemis 2 challenge where the kids are going to collect different moon samples. So that is another opportunity as well for you guys. If you had some idea and had an idea but didn't know how to sort of bring it to life, we can support you with that. And then finally, I'm just going to switch to this one. Oh, this is the last but one slide. If you are someone who has a bolt, the original bolt, whether it be a single version or a power pack, and you were interested in upgrading, you can actually trade in your existing ones to receive quite a hefty discount off the new Bolt Plus sets. For example, if you hand in a power pack, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Meg, but I believe it's about £900 off the new one. So if it is something that you're looking to do, and sort of upgrade and have a product that's going to last a little longer, then that might be an option for you guys as well. Any questions on those things at all?
No, nothing at the minute.
No. Okay. And then finally, very, very exciting, Sphero are launching a brand new product for the older age range. So we're talking 13 and up, really. And they have created their very own Sphero Blueprint robotics kits. So I'm just going to give you the quick launch video of this, and then we'll move to a Q&A at the end. Here we go. There we go. So that is the new Sphero Blueprint robotics kit. That looks crazy, and I'm really excited to get my hands on those. Have we got any questions now at this point? I think I
We
might have just seen
do.
one in the chat. Yep.
Yeah, so Michael says, can you or anyone within the webinar recommend an engaging or fun lesson for age 9 to 11? I will have 1 hour and will reuse the lesson week on week with a different school or class. I have to assume no prior knowledge as I don't know the students. Given limited time available, I need to get students started and working quickly, i.e. minimal setup time and minimal teacher talk time.
Okay. Yeah. It's a good point. So for a lesson where you can sort of you can't really ensure that you can't really guarantee they've got any prior knowledge, I would focus on more of the sequencing and those movement tasks. And like I said, probably a really fun, engaging one is the maze, because they're relatively cheap. You could do it in a fairly small amount of space, nothing too crazy. You can actually do mini tabletop ones as well if you have small rods as well. And that will just frame the activity really, really well. Instead of having bolts rolling all over the place, that will sort of give the kids a bit of structure and a bit of a mission, as it were, to go on to. But there are, again, if you dive into the holiday camp ones, there's loads in there that are within an hour. The same as the Sphero Central ones. There's absolutely tons in there. So I've just spent a bit of time just diving through those and picking out which ones are realistic for you to achieve in a small space with minimum knowledge, and doesn't need tons of equipment. Because you're absolutely right, if you're going from school to school, you can't guarantee every time you're going to have a school hall. You can't guarantee the kids' knowledge, and therefore it needs to be very, very simple. I do agree with that.
Thanks, Adam. And then Murray says, beyond drawing shapes, how accessible is it for 6 to 8-year-olds with low literacy levels? I can see how you could have a lot of fun with the races, mazes, golfs, etc. I'm just wondering if they can access more than just the drive features. Can they access the LCD, sound, etc., or would they need to be on the block coding?
Um, yeah. So in terms of let's bring that up now. Actually, that's a good point. So if I were to change this coding language, so change it to draw. So this is what it looks like for draw. So you literally just have a pen. So in terms of utilizing the screen and things, you won't be able to do that. What the kids will be able to do is just change the display on top by actually clicking this and changing it to something else. That's not using the coding blocks. What I would say though, for ages 6 to 8, I mean, I used to use Bolt Plus with year threes upwards. So you're looking at that bracket. But for ages 6, what you could do is focus on developing sequencing skills, but using sound and display and lights instead of the movement, because the movement is going to take a lot of work in terms of knowing angles, measurements, direction, etc. But you can easily create a sequencing lesson that avoids that. So yeah, it can definitely be differentiated down, so the activity is accessible via the blocks for the younger kids. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, he says thank you.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's
sort of the
it.
middle ground between indie and Bolt. Indie has no coding blocks at all, and then Bolt then jumps to the draw and the word. But yeah, if you did want to progress from the draw, then you do have the option of using the word blocks, but more of the simple ones like the image and the sounds, etc. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Agree, Murray. Cool. Right. Okay. I appreciate that's a whistle-stop tour of a very detailed teaching portal. But so what I'd recommend you do is just spend the time. Just spend the time going through the central and just see, are there lessons on there for you to warrant investing in this? Does it bring something else to the curriculum that you currently don't have? If you're considering things like Lego education, is the building element going to get in the way of the coding? And therefore, is this a better product for what you're trying to achieve in an hour window? So it all depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, dive into that Sphero Central website, get a feel for it. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to myself and Kim and the team, and we'll be more than happy to help you guys out.